morning, everybody. My name's Dain, and I am an alcoholic. And it's pretty awesome to know that today, because I can remember a day when there was no clarity about what it really meant to be an alcoholic. I had no clarity on that whatsoever. And I sailed through these doors on the wings of victory. I showed up and I hid in the back of the room, and I shook and I sweated and I pushed everybody away from me, and everybody kept telling me, keep coming, and I couldn't even respond because I'd been so separated from all my you brothers and sisters out here in God's world for so long. You know, alcoholism is the great separator, and it separated me from everything and anything that was good in my life for an absolute long time. So today, to know just the basic facts that are laid out in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that told me exactly what it means to be an alcoholic, that I have an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind that is absolutely incredible and can be incredible today. I've got a few years down the road here. My first sponsor assigned my sobriety date because it was still kind of bleary, and was somewhere around November 15th, so he gave me the 17th of 1991. And if it wasn't for the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the power, the grace, and the love of a God that has loved me since he created me, and the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I know I wouldn't be standing here this morning. And what an incredible thing. You know, I talk about separation. You know, these last couple of years, you know, I think it's common conversation to talk about, you know, how separated we all became, you know, from so many things, you know, that are absolutely vital. And as the big book says, that's necessary to life, to our living, and to our, not an existence, but to the incredible life that we have, you know. And when the crud came around, you know, it dropped the hammer and shut the door on so many things, you know, that I and all of us have survived on. And here we stand here this morning, you know. And, you know, the other book talks about God, the Almighty, and you know, they put that in one word, Almighty. And the intent was for two words, all-mighty. And if God wasn't almighty, none of us would be sitting in this room this morning. None of us would be here. That willingness never would have came from the very bottom of our souls, in the screaming cry of desperation that we no longer want to be who we've been. And every face that I'm looking out here in the audience today, I know has been risen from those ashes to sit here today with an incredible sense of purpose and usefulness. Thank you, God, for that. I love this. The name of this conference, Sunlight of the Spirit, and what's that mean to me? God is light, love, soul, spirit, life, intelligence, all-encompassing and absolutely infinite. And shines that light on my path and every one of yours paths on this journey. Lighten the way as we move forward, carrying that message of his power and his love to someone else. This is something that I never thought would be attainable for me, because at the backside of all my drinking, so to speak, at the backside of all my indulging in dry goods, I was the absolute loser of the world. And this is how I felt, like so many of us did. I don't have a shot in hell of being respected. I don't have a shot in hell of having any kind of sense of values or integrity. And you know, I wasn't raised that way. I came from a pretty darn good family. You got to excuse me, I'm standing here at the podium this morning and I don't have my jacket buttoned, and you know, that's real important, but I'm glad Peter's not here this morning, you know, because my hair is not as good as his for sure. And my jacket is unbuttoned, and I would have heard a little something about that. And I got to tell you, this was the coolest thing. You know, I've age appropriate, whatever the hell it may be, I don't know, pardon my language, but you know, I've got this forgetfulness that just keeps popping into my head. And it was Thursday night, and I'm driving up here from my beautiful hillbilly hideout in Tennessee on Friday morning to get here and be plugged in to something that I've been craving and missing for so long. I think about this at 7 o'clock at night. You know, now what am I gonna do? You know, I run in the closet, put it on, I'm going, God, I can't button that button over my chest, you know? And I start laughing. I'm going, well, I'm happy it's not my belly, you know. I'm still looking pretty good, you know. I got to get a new sport jacket. So where do I go? I live in Greenville, and it's a sleepy little town, and they roll the rug up, you know, about 8 o'clock, you know, at night. And it's just the coolest, greatest, so blessed to be their place, you know. It's just amazing, you know. God's work is everywhere, everywhere. You know, and this Greene County, I got to tell you, they got 361 churches in Greene County. Can you imagine that? And people don't wear it on their sleeve. And they talk about their faith, and they don't sell you anything. They just say, welcome, you know. And if you got a church, you want to come to church, you know, come to lunch, this and that. And that's just the way it is. And, you know, and it doesn't matter where you come from, what your color is, you know, what your ethnic origin is, or whatever. It's welcome, you know. And that's home. Almost as good as being home here. So off to Walmart, you know, it's like 7:30. Here I go to Walmart. And I'm not a Walmart shopper up north here. But down there, I kind of love going in, you know. I mean, it's just super clean, and the people are just awesome. Hey, can we help you this and that? And I go bombing in. I have no idea where to find a sport jacket. And I see this cat around, and he's right past the cash register. He's got the blue vest on, you know, big Walmart yellow star, you know. Hey, bud, you know, you guys got sport jackets? He goes, yeah, man, I can help you. Come on with me, you know. And he's about 6'4", and, you know, I'm a little vertically challenged, you know, and I'm a couple right up along, you know, and we go trucking across, and it was the greatest thing, you know. And he's saying to me as we're going, he says, you like the Titans? And I'm like, I like the Titans. And, I'm thinking of a comic book or whatever. And then I'm saying, I thought I saw a commercial. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, you know, in that sense. But, you know, there's a movie or something like that. And I say, well, I guess so, you know. And he goes, well, that's cool, you know. And he takes me over to the men's department. And we show up. And he says, man, he says, we're kind of light because of summer, but we're just coming into season. And he's got University of Tennessee sports jackets, you know. And different athletic teams. Now, I'm not, you know, I don't indulge, you know, in the athletics and stuff. You know, I do different stuff, but I'm just really not sports-minded. You know, football, baseball, and I'm like, whoa, you know, I kind of like the orange one. I wonder what that'll look like, you know. and then the second, and then I go, oh, God bless his heart. And if you don't know what that means, you know, down south, God bless his heart, you know, it's like, what the hell, man? You know? But I don't respond that way, you know. I got a smile on my face, and I'm just happy for him because he was happy, you know. He was just being a service, you know, and I'm saying how cool this is. And so I wandered around. I didn't find nothing. I says, well, I'm just going to have to eat some crow and, you know, forget about buttoning my jacket, you know, and off I go. But you know something? I'm walking out of there, and the thought occurred to me. I said, you know, a lot of times what I say is not what you hear, you know, and it's perception. And my thought attached to that was, I went right to when I was delivered into your loving arms here, and I heard sobriety. My follow-up thought was, you mean to tell me they got a way where I'll never have to drink? Are you kidding me? And I hung my hat on that. Not drinking was sobriety. I had no idea that sobriety was something that I could have a level of integrity. That sobriety would give me some values. That sobriety would instill a deep respect coming from me to you. That sobriety would give me the ability to love you as you loved me when I came here. I had no idea that sobriety was going to give me a family. I showed up here, I had no family. And when I was raised up as a kid, I had no family. It was my brother, my mother, and my dad. And I talked about that this weekend with somebody that I love dearly. And I say, this is absolutely incredible. And it moves me just to tell you that, you know. What a family I have today. And the love I can give and the love I can get. It's absolutely amazing. I had no idea. I thought it was all about not drinking. And how did I get there? I'm a kid in my single digits, and I picked up my value system by observing everything around me. And as I said, it was just me, my brother, my mother, and my dad. My brother was a year older than me, and he was mentally disadvantaged. And I was given the responsibility to look after him, Brother Will. And I can tell you, as a kid, I didn't like that because I thought I was getting shortchanged all the time, and I had that dis-ease all the time because that weight of responsibility was put on my shoulders. My mom worked, my dad worked. My dad was a workaholic and an alcoholic. That has nothing to do with me being an alcoholic. None whatsoever. And my mom, she was an absolute Al-Anon. That's one of the reasons why we didn't have a family, because she was so busy managing my dad's drinking, or so she thought. And it was everybody else's fault. The aunts, the uncles, this, that, and whatever, Nobody is allowed. I put the concertina wire up around this yard. Nobody's getting in those boundaries, and that's as simple as that. And I'm going to protect this family unit, and bless her. She was doing the best she could at the time she was doing it with what she had, which was nothing but trying to manage. I remember times in that household, that was absolutely crazy, like so many of us. And I remember a time when my dad was out on the front lawn, and he was laying on the front lawn, and he was sobbing and yelling, "I don't know what's wrong with me." And he's got a suitcase out there, and clothes are scattered all over the place. We've all had serious circumstances. We've all had environmental impacts, good and bad. But these are the things I observed. So I built my value system, on how to protect myself, how to get love, how to push love away from me, how dishonesty is going to serve me, how to shift the blame from here to there and whatever. And I got to tell you, I did pretty well at that. And around the tender age of 11, our next door neighbors had a little grocery store that was down the hill. Me and one of the wildcats of the neighborhood came up with a great plan, and we broke into the basement and started hitting some long necks because we thought that might be a cool thing to do. And I got some relief. I didn't know I got relief. But I certainly appreciated and loved from that first hit on that long net, that sense of ease and comfort that I got from it. And that just started my drinking career. And I went from one thing to another, to another, to another. Never gave any consideration to my mother and all the pain that she was in. Never gave any consideration to my dad and all the pain that he was in. Doing what he was doing, probably in spite of what he tried not to do. And he couldn't get ahead of that. And my mom, all her pain, all her shame and embarrassment. He wrecked cars. He did. There was just a lot of stuff. He had a temper that I inherited. It's called rage. I listened to Bill talk about that. In his fantastic speech. I got to thank all the speakers too. What a tremendous job they did here. And before I go any further, I absolutely got to thank the committee, Julie and Rick and everybody who put this thing together. What a super time. What a super time, and the privilege to be here. So I thank you all. Thank you all for that. And where was I? Oh yeah, let's not forget about that. Thanks, Bill. Oh man, yeah, and he was the kind of guy that wouldn't take a lot of crap. And I remember one occasion, and this is back in the early '50s. That he got bounced outside a bar in this little town called Devon, and we had a little Nash Rambler, and he didn't care for that much. He's going to get those guys. They went back in after they beat the crap out of him. He got in the car and drove it through the front wall of the bar. And he lost his license. I think, I'm a little kid, but he lost his license for 2 or 3 years. But it's a really big deal back in the 50s. They just didn't do that kind of thing. But I'm not proud to tell you the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and I inherited some of that stuff, which just really wasn't cool, and that all worked until it didn't, like so many other things. At that tender age of 14, I decided that I had enough. I had enough of standing up for my brother. I was embarrassed and I was ashamed, that he was mentally disadvantaged, and that he was defective, and I couldn't stand the crap that was going on in the house, and my mom's iron hand, and my dad, and they offered a lot of love, and I certainly, I wasn't capable at that point in time of receiving it, and I went down to Stratford Avenue, which is not the best place to be in a city called Bridgeport, and I shacked up, with a couple other guys, and they taught me the mechanics of boosting cars and ruining people's lives, that I know today, were absolutely ruined when they came out and they had no wheels to go to work on and no transmissions to shift, and tough stuff to clean up, 50 years later, but. We put a little dent in some of that anyway, because I have found a couple of the inherited grandkids from that, which was pretty powerful. But this became a way of life, and I just kind of scratched my way through high school. I don't know how I got there, and I'm in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, to the point where I'm 17 and I'm just about to graduate from high school, and I'm standing in front of the same judge in the same court. Not at the same time, of course, but, this was a series of events and many times that I had seen this guy. And he said to me, he says, "You know what, I'm about sick of you." That's exactly what he said to me. He says, "I'm about sick of you." He says, "You got two choices." He said, "You're either going to step out of the line and get out of this town, or I'm throwing you in a can and you're going to be there for quite a while." The war's going on across the pond. And I used to say, that, I joined the military, and it was one day, and I was speaking, and it hit me right between the eyes. I didn't join the military, I was given a choice, and I didn't do the noble thing, I did the thing to save my butt. I went to New Haven, I stepped over the line, and that started a military career. That was life-changing in itself, I took a kid, put his butt on a train, and off I went. I did some training, I did some other training, I went overseas, and in a lot of respects, I have no regrets for anything, none. I learned a lot of good stuff, I learned a lot of good stuff. Not that I practiced it when I got out, but, the teamwork, and I got broken down, and I got remolded, because the kid who showed up at basic training, was the kid who was thrown in the mess hall grease pit to shovel it out for 3 days in a row, because I had such an attitude and such a mouth, and I was the wise guy, and I was the cocky Rocky on the corner who was going to tell you what was going on, and those drill sergeants just don't take that kind of crap, and they had me low crawling back and forth to the mess hall to clean the grease pit out, and I got to tell you, on your belly low crawling, it was not a block, it was a few blocks. And then after that, the mouth doesn't stop, and they've got me feeding coal in these old gravity feed furnaces, in the barracks, so all these cats upstairs are exhausted and sleeping from all this rigorous exercise and everything, and I'm down there shoveling coal. I'm going to show them, and I traveled for a long time with that. I'm going to show them attitude. But, that was an illustrious start to a military career that, turned into something that was pretty interesting for me. I got shipped overseas, and I spent quite a bit of time across the pond, and I had a lot of experiences there. And probably the most profound is something happened there to me where a switch got turned off. Something happened to me where a switch got turned off, and the value of life became non-existent. And my statement that commonly came out of my mouth was, "It don't mean nothing." And I came back here to the world with that attitude, and that switch turned off. And they turned me loose in general population after spending quite a bit of time totally separated from the world, you people, and reality. I have no regrets for that, because we're all forged on the anvil of life, are we not? But it wasn't an easy road, even though I made it easy. And the reason and how I made it easy was booze. How I made it easy was dry goods. I had connected, I got real tight with some brothers there. Lost almost all of them. And there was a guy who ETS'd out ahead of me that had a place in Maine. He inherited from his aunt, and it was a ton of acreage. And when I got out, I was so uncomfortable. I didn't know how to get with you guys. And it was just different attitudes. It was a different time. It was a different place, and this wasn't the place that I had left, and I wasn't the person that left, that came back. So I went up to Sandy's up in Maine. He welcomed me with open arms. And he let me live on his land. Not in his house, but live on his land. So I set up camp in the woods. And I stayed there for quite a while. You know, I just couldn't get with the program of humanness. I couldn't get with a lot of things. And I had a lot of static in the attic. There was just a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, as you've heard many stories, you know, all of a sudden the princess comes onto the horizon, you know, and this gal, you know, comes up, you know, with a few other friends, and you know, I know it was love at first sight, absolutely, you know, and you know, off to the lust races we went, you know, and she says, "You wanna?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely, you know. Why don't you come back to my place, you know?" And and off to the tent we go, you know. The romance started, you know. And that didn't last too long, you know. I don't know if the roof started leaking or what the deal was, but you know, it says, you know, this has got to change, you know. And I'm saying, well, this is pretty good, so maybe, you know, maybe I'll take a shot at this. And you know, I try to integrate myself back into some social living in society and whatever. And I don't have to tell you, you know, it was just an absolute mess. You know, and I had no idea what love was, and I absolutely had all the conceptions of what lust was, and she had some earnest in her heart, and I didn't have one at the time, even though I was born with one, and God had given me one. You know, that was absolutely just shut down because it was all about me. You know, and I never knew that, and you know, we careened through a whole bunch of stuff, and you know, actually got married. You know, which was crazy, and. You know, and the funniest part about it is, you know, she was Scottish, and her dad was sober, and I had no idea about Alcoholics Anonymous, sober, or anything. And I remember a couple of times trying to sit at a dining room table, you know, in their little house down in Easton, and he'd be looking at me, you know, and this guy had eyebrows that were about as thick as this, you know, and he was like this. He was like a barrel, you know, and he did these Scottish games, throwing the caber toss, which is like a telephone pole. I mean, he was just you know, he was a big guy, and I'd look at him, you know, and he'd look at me, and I'd look at him, and he'd look at me, and then he'd get up and run out, you know, somewhere, you know, right in the middle of having some food. And I'm like, oh, this is strange. You know, little did I know that he had gotten a phone call and he's going off on a 12-step. Because at that time he was into this deal for 20 plus years. 20 plus years, you know. And when I finally found him to make amends, you know, he was like close to 50. You know, pretty crazy. But I didn't pay attention to any of that, you know, and we got divorced, and, you know, and it was from this to the frying pan, and, you know, and I married a gal, and you know, because I just couldn't be alone. And you know, through that, you know, all of a sudden, you know, I come to, and there's 3 kids running around, and a woman who's screaming, hooping, and howling because she's so damn terrified and full of fear, you know, that is this guy going to come home? Where's he going to be? What's it going to look like? Is this car going to be smashed up? You know, and just all this folly, you know, just kept continuing and continuing. Whew, what a mess. I got a job in the refuse industry, and that was ideal for me, the garbage business, because nobody really cared what you do as long as you go out there, you know, and you drive a truck and you know, pick up the garbage, you know, and it was nice because I drive a front loader or a rear load or a roll off. That's the type of trucks they were, but they all had nice room underneath the seat where I could stash my bottle, you know. And I'd get off, you know, and it was ideal, you know. I'd roll into the barn, you know, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and you know, after, you know, I kind of get set, the shakes are settled down a bit, and I pull out, with 25 tons of rolling death before there's any garbage on it, and down the road I go, and, just thinking that I'm doing the greatest thing because I'm showing up for work. And, that's the only shroud of integrity that I was able to hold on to, was the fact that I went to work. All the rest of it, the paychecks, the bars getting paid, the package stores getting paid, everybody got paid before the money went home to put food on the table and pay the rent. All the important things got paid before any of that stuff, But I hung on to that, what I thought was dignity, because I'm showing up and I'm working and I'm providing, like hell. But, and it's no wonder that woman's screaming, hooping, and hollering. And that part with this job, I ended up in waste management, which is like a national refuse company. And there was a gentleman who came to manage the place, Kevin O'Connell. And there was more than one occasion, he wouldn't ask me about my drinking, but he'd just say, "Hey, did you have a couple of drinks last night?" And I'd say, "Yeah." "Yeah, okay. You all right?" "Yeah." And that'd be the extent of it. Never quizzed me, never gave me the third degree, never got grilled. Just go out and do your thing, and that's it. Friday afternoons, I'd sometimes have the fellas over. I'd be good, and I'd stay home. I wouldn't go to the bar, but, they'd bring the half gallons over, and we hang out in this tiny little apartment, and, just get juiced. This is what we do. And there was this one occasion where everybody's getting loaded, and one of the boys, I tell him, I'm going to drive him home because he's too loaded to drive, and I am just knee walking, tongue chewing, falling down grass, eating stupid drunk myself, right? And my son, my oldest son, was like 2.5 years old, and he's a little tow-headed, red-haired, curled, freckled-faced kid. Where that came from, I don't know, not me. And I used to kid her, that must have been the mailman, but they said he was standing there, and I said, "Hey, you want to go for a ride with Dad?" And I don't remember any of this stuff, but the guys the next morning did. And he got his jacket, and he was standing there with a big smile on his face, And we talk about pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. How many of those experiences can I remember? How many of them? And that little boy standing there, he's excited because he's going to, with his dad, and he has no idea. And I pass out flat on my face. Next morning, I go into the barn, and the boys are there. And they start hitting me with, "Oh, man, you should have seen yourself again last night, man. You just fell right on your face. You passed out. Your kid was standing there. He was all excited. He wanted to go for a ride with it, and you just fell out, I don't do shame well at all. And I went right to rage. And now we got the fisticuffs on, and we got a brouhaha going, at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning in the barn, And that's just one of so many situations. But I'm grateful for all of those experiences because it brought me to a place of a morning that I used to wake up at the 1:30 or come to was be more like the truth. Somebody asked me this morning if I'm going to tell the truth, and I said, yeah, so there it is, I would come too. And I'd prop myself up, and I'd pull out the nightstand drawer, and I'd pull out my pint of vodka, and I'd bang maybe, whatever that I could get down. I'd bang it down, and I'd run to the bathroom, and I'd hang onto the sink. And as my buddy says, we're engaged now in the vomiting calisthenics because it wouldn't stay down. And I'd hang onto the sink until the shake stopped, and I'd get the rest of that pint down. And down the stairs I'd go, ready to get my butt into 25 tons of rolling death going down the road. I'm ready for the day. But that morning, the power of an incredible God, the Almighty, came to me. I rolled out of that bed, and I said, I can't do this. And I am sobbing. I can't do this anymore. And as clear to me as that vision is at this moment, The vision of my dad on that front lawn with the suitcase, laying on the ground, sobbing, I don't know what's wrong with me, came to me. And I was sobbing. I don't want to be him. I don't want to be him. God help me. And that just wasn't a drunk's prayer. That came from the very depths of my soul. That was a cry of anguish and desperation, of fear and of pain, and the agony of being separated so long from anything that was good. And that was the grace and the power of that God in my life right then and there. And I did not open that pint. And I can't tell you what the next few days looked like, except I had a 5-gallon bucket. I had no idea what detoxing was. And today I know that probably wasn't the coolest thing to do. But I hung out in that bedroom. And however many days it was, 2, 3, 4 days, I don't remember. And it was agonizing. I had crap that was going on in this head that was just unbelievable. There was no reality to it whatsoever. You talk about hallucinating and sick. And the power of that God that carries me here right at this moment was carrying me through that. Because he's got a sense of purpose for me like every one of us sitting in this room. And I had no idea about that. And I come out of that experience, and I'm really ashamed because I wasn't able to make it to work. And I crawled into that same bathroom, onto that same sink that I hung on to for so many mornings doing those vomiting calisthenics. And I looked in that mirror, and for the first time, I saw Dain with a little bit of clarity. And what was looking back at me was something so foreign. And I was so filled with self-loathing. I despised myself. I said, through all the things that you've been through in your life, dragging your butt through the mud and the blood, you can't manage this. A goddamn drink. No, I can't. I got on the blower and I called down because back in that day too, they had these things called answering machines that were hooked to a telephone that was hung on the wall. And and for all you younger people, you know, that was pretty cool. You know, I remember the days of party lines and you pick up the phone, you know, and you had, oh, excuse me, Ethel, you know, are you going to be long? Oh, no, you know, no, we'll be 5 minutes, we'll be off, you know, hang up, you know. And that was way back when. But Kevin had left multiple messages. Where are you? Are you okay? How come you're not in work? I picked up that phone. And I made one of the toughest calls I can ever remember making. Can I talk to Kevin? Who's this? Dain. And I am full of shame and guilt, remorse. He gets on the horn and he says, man, I'm glad to hear from you. He says, can you come down? And I says, yeah. And I go out of that tiny little apartment and I get into that $300 hoopty. And that place was only about 2.5 miles from where this apartment was, and that journey was like 1,000 miles. And I drove down that hill into that yard and I walked into that building. You know, and there's some secretaries and stuff there. And I got to tell you, you know, I felt about that big. And everybody is looking at me. Everybody is watching me. And he's standing in the doorway of his office. And he's waving to me like this. Come on in. And I just don't even know how to act. I am broken. And I am empty. And I got nothing. And he closes the door behind me. And he says, how you doing? I told him, not good. He says, you done being sick? I says, I sure as shit hope so, man. And he put his arm around me, and he gave me a hug, and I'm like, whoa, you know, I hadn't really been that close except for the physical intimacies, which was no intimacies with anybody for a long time, and here's a guy hugging me, and I'm like, I'm frozen, you know, and I am just shot. And he steps back and he says, you know, he says, you made it through that. God's going to carry you through whatever lays ahead of you. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm going, I don't need a damn priest. I don't need a pastor. I don't need any of that business, you know. I just don't even know what's going on with me. He says, you're going to be okay. I'm going to take you to AA. He says, I'm going to take you to a meeting. And here's the turn in this. This man had asked me on a few occasions, have you had a couple of drinks? He knew what was going on with me. And he wasn't an alcoholic. God bless the Al-Anons. That man saved my life, coupled up with the power of God. I didn't know this, but he came from a large Boston Irish family, and he was the only one in the family that missed a bullet. And he had gone to Al-Anon, and as was practiced back in the day. He had a program of recovery under his belt. He had done the 12 steps out of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous and followed those precise set of directions and knew exactly what to say and what not to say and when to say it. And he was totally hip to my condition. So I have nothing but the utmost gratitude to the Al-Anons, of which my fabulous wife, who gave an incredible talk yesterday afternoon, is a part of. He opened the door to opportunity for life and living for me. As I sailed through these doors on the wings of victory, and as I said a little earlier, I sat in the back of the rooms and I shook and I sweated and I just pushed all of you away because I was so terrified. So terrified. But I stayed. I didn't hear the business about keep coming. I didn't hear about 90, you know, do 90 and 90. I didn't hear about any of that business, you know. I just kept coming. I didn't know what the hell to do. And I'm not drinking. And I'm not going to drink. And one day turned into 2 days, that turned into 3 days. And that's how it goes with us, isn't it? And little by slowly, what attracted me and kept me here, and I know that today, is everything that I've experienced here this weekend. And that's God's music. That's your laughter. That's your lightness of heart. That's your enthusiasm. That's your sense of spirit of being a part of something that's absolutely incredible, miraculous, life-saving and life-giving. And it's that music that I heard, that music that I listened to, that music that kept me here. And I moved up a row at a time and a row at a time and a row at a time. And I start feeling a little bit better and a little bit better. Now I'm talking a little bit to you guys and this guys and this guys. And all the cats that approach me, you know, of course, I got to get the hard heads and the knuckleheads, you know, who, you got to talk to Dain. You got to talk to Dain, you know. So it was Dickie Barstool Barton, you know, and Al the Slicer, and you know, and they called him that because he worked at the A&P in the deli department, right? But I'm thinking there's a romantic guy. I like these guys, you know. They're all tough, you know. And they had Buick Electras, you know, and they had Pontiac Bonnevilles, and man, it was like, you know, riding around with the family, you know. And they shoved me in the back seat and stuff, you know. And at the time, I didn't know this. They all had big cars, so they could cram 6, 7 of us in there, you know. And we dragged all over the state of Connecticut, into New York and into New Jersey, you know. And they stuffed me between these guys who were chewing on cigars, you know. Hey, all right, kid, you know this, and all right, kid, that, and blah, blah, blah. And little by slowly, I didn't know this, you know. They had me dumping a piece of garbage and a piece of garbage and a piece of garbage, you know. And there was identification there, and it was just, it was amazing. And that fellowship, that part of that fellowship embraced me just wonderfully, and I learned the language. I learned the language well. And I don't know if it was happening at the time or I just didn't hear it. And it's probably because I just didn't hear it. But I didn't hear a lot about the solution being talked about. We're going to meetings. I'm learning the language. And I'm getting promoted. They took me off chair duty and put me on ashtray duty. And from ashtray duty, they put me on the washing the coffee cups. Now that really, this is great stuff. We had actual porcelain cups. And back in the day, you'd walk in a meeting, you had to cut your way through. With the cigarette smoke. Oh my God, it was crazy. Just wonderful craziness. But it was home, and it's been home, and it has stayed home. What experiences. And after that promotion of cleaning the coffee cups, they one day, they recognized how well I was doing, and they asked me to chair a meeting. I've arrived. It's just wonderful, And then I knew that everybody was coming to meetings so they could listen to Dain and his great share, because I had learned this language so well. And I went to step meetings, and I went to big book meetings, and I thought big book meetings was read the stories. The stories are great. Man, he had a tough time she had, blah, 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 and I got to tell you, I shared a lot of opinions on an experience I never had, and they sounded quite eloquent. They were wonderful. And I know that's why they promoted me to chairing a meeting, It was great stuff. But seriously, this was a time of fellowship. I wasn't immersed in solution at all. And that was great. It absolutely was. I believe in this journey, everything is enough. At the time I'm having it. Everything is enough until the time I'm having it. Until it no longer works. And I got to that place where all that stuff was no longer working. I had money in my pocket, the gals are back, I got a good car, blah, 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 blah. I hit the trifecta. And in the meantime, in all of this, and all this fellowship and all this, the life that I'm living, is not a godly life by any means. I had no idea about what a relationship with my Creator should look like. I started off with the embarrassment of a closed bathroom door on my knees. I don't want anybody to see me mumbling incantations to something. At that time, I couldn't see, hear, feel, smell, or touch. But they told me to do it, and I was doing it. And I'm embarrassed about that, Never had any sense of embarrassment about hanging out down the end of the bar when I'm peeing my pants, and guys are laughing the next day. So what? Everybody pisses their pants, right? But here I am, I'm told to do a little praying, and I'm ashamed about that, because it was just so foreign to me. It was creepy, What is this stuff, So the necessity to have that relationship, the necessity to have a God in my life, was nothing that really was stressed. I had all the other gods. Look how great I'm doing. I'm making money. I got the gal. Look at my car. Look at my status. I've been appointed this and this and this. And I can chair a meeting. What a wonderful position in life to be. And I'm living dirty. I'm running around. I'm on sex sprees. I'm on gambling sprees. I'm on money sprees. One thing after another. I have no idea that I'm still seeking relief. And I need to, because my internal condition is just absolutely miserable. And I really don't know that because it hasn't manifested itself completely yet. My solution was taken away. Drinking was never my problem. Dry goods was never my problem. It was always my solution. It gave me that sense of ease and comfort. That wasn't the problem. It was my solution. And that was taken away. And the ego, the false self, the not God-created Dain, put the other things in its place. So I still could have some relief from that internal condition that I had no idea I was suffering from. And that series of events brought me to the edge of a bed. And if you saw me sitting on that bed, you wouldn't have believed it, because the guy leading that double life, everything is the greatest since sliced bread. This is awesome. And I was in such despair and such pain. And I didn't have the guts to pull the trigger. All those things with the fellowship, all those things that was providing relief for me was no longer working. I went to a meeting. I didn't have the guts to pull the trigger, and again, I was at that place, you know. You can't even manage this. This is horrible. God picked me up, lifted me, and took me to a meeting. And a guy I said I'd never drink with, and a guy I couldn't stand. Every time he shared, I couldn't stand. I didn't even like being around him because he was cocky, arrogant, and belligerent. I thought his ego was bigger than any church that we ever walked into, you know. Cocky. Rough. Thought he came from a tough school. I'd never drink with him. I'm just a little bit tougher. And Dick approached me and he says, I know you're in a lot of trouble, and I've been watching you. He says, you better sit down with me, because if you don't, you're going to die. And I looked at him for the first time with a whole different pair of glasses. And I said to Dick, I said, I want to die. I just can't stand this. And he took me by the hand, and with him taking me by the hand, he put my hand in God's hand by sitting me down and opening up the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, showing me the first promise on the title page. All these things that I had never seen. A story of how thousands of men and women have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. How they recovered from alcoholism. And that began my journey. I've had many, and I've had incredible men put in my life that are my heroes today. I have incredible men that have been put in my life that are my teachers. I have an incredible sponsor today. I have incredible spiritual advisors, all my family. And that's all a gift of starting that journey with Dick. And he gave me the nuts and bolts of what this deal looked like. And I got that clarity on that first step, what it meant to be an alcoholic. And I came out of that with an absolute sense of knowing that I was hopeless. I got no skin in the game whatsoever. I got nothing between me and me when it comes to this thinking. Because he had me substitute that word drinking for thinking. He put all my experiences up against that second paragraph on page 52, the bedevilments, you know. You're having trouble with personal relationships. Are you a prey to misery and depression? Do you have that sense of uselessness, you know? Are you a damn phony, you know? And I'm going, yeah, and yeah. And I come out of that first step, you know. I can't manage the decision, you know, that I'm going to go on this spree. I can't manage the decision that I'm not going to be dishonest, you know. With it, you know, none of this. And my life is so wrecked. Because all these things in this external world, I'm trying to treat an internal condition. The dry goods and the booze are gone, and I'm still trying to treat an internal condition with external means. That never got addressed. I come out of that first step knowing that I was absolutely hopeless. I've heard it said around these rooms that this first step is a step of hope. And I'm here to tell you it's not. It's absolutely not, you know. I mean, we shut all the doors. We close the cellar doorway. We plug the mouse hole. There is no wiggle room on that first step whatsoever, you know. You either are or you're not. And you're the one to tell yourself based on your own personal experience, you know, and that's the greatest thing. We don't hang a label on anybody, you know. You hang it on yourself. Is this you? Absolutely. And each step is cause for the next one, is it not? So that was cause for me to go to that second step. I never really looked at Never really looked at, never mind. I seen the steps on the wall, and that's the program that I lived. Until I couldn't anymore. And there was, you got a willingness to believe in something that you can't hear, see, feel, smell, or touch, Dain? I guess I don't have much choice. I'm going to give this a shot. And it was as simple as that. I'm going to give this a shot. I saw the necessity for it. As I do today, standing here. I got to have something because I got nothing. And I know this. This is the final stop. Done. Finished. We roll into that third step. And we talk about any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Well, I had, all the evidence was in. For sure. It was all there. The truth of my own experience. It's not worth the crap. The money isn't. The title I'm sharing a meeting isn't. Even going to meetings wasn't. None of that is sufficient to bring about a state of being recovered from that seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. What I needed was that spiritual awakening. I had heard about it, talked about it, shared a lot of opinions about it, but never experienced it. And he showed me, what that meant, like a life, run on self-will can hardly be a success. We went over that toolkit of self-will, This is Dain, how when I'm operating, and this is how I operate, and I can operate this way today. I can be kind, considerate, modest, patient, self-sacrificing when needed, And if that ain't working, I turn the heat up in the kitchen, and I can just be absolutely mean, egotistical, dishonest. But whatever's going to fit, that nut, I got the wrench for. And I use it. Because I'm the guy who's running through people's lives with an invisible clipboard and an unwritten list of demands. And when you're not doing what I want you to do in the manner I want you to do it, I'm checking the boxes off one at a time. And I don't know that. And I'm getting twisted around the axle. Little by slowly, I'm getting twisted around the axle. And that condition that I'm walking around with, that I can't get rid of I need God for all of that. That restlessness, that irritability, that discontentment, is all on me. And yet I'm still marching through people's lives. And I can do that today. That's all contingent on where my spiritual condition is. Like any of us. And we talk about fears, and this is the guy, who would never touch any of that, because I'm cocky, rocky off the corner, and I come back, and I'm a big war hero now, I don't have any fears, blah, 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 and we dive deep into that. And what came out of that was pretty simple, was that prayer. What would you have me be? Dain, I want you to be a man of faith, because men of faith have courage. And what's that courage? To trust and rely on me. And to this day, sometimes that's a tall order, because I'm the problem solver. I'm the guy who always took the action. I'm the guy who always had a plan. Maybe I can give myself a little better deal on this than what God can. That business about closing your eyes and falling backwards and hoping you get caught, it's like, that's pretty uncomfortable to me, But it's a way of life that I've come to learn. I don't practice it all the time. And I got calluses on my knees and my elbows, and my chin gets busted up because I'm falling down and busting my butt. And I make those mistakes. But they're not mistakes. Those are experiences that I'm supposed to have so I can give that experience to another man. That's something that just goes in the bag, If it was easy, I wouldn't even be here. And if I saw any of this coming, what's coming here today, and the abundance that I have, if I had that so-called foresight, I probably wouldn't be here. We hear that statement, if hindsight was foresight, oh boy, that'd be a great thing. I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that. Because if I have foresight, you see, I'm going to take my foot off the pedal, and I'm not going to do any work, and God provides me with many, many experiences to do some work. If I know that God's going to take care of me, if I got that foresight that this is going to be okay and all I got, I'm going to coast. I'm in neutral. You know, I'm not doing any shifting. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to take advantage of the opportunities that's in front of me. I take a look at that, you know, here's the how and why of it, quit playing God, and I just love the simplicity of that, you know, and that follow-up sentence. Why? Because it doesn't work. It never worked for me, you know. He's the father, I'm the kid. He's the employer, I'm the employee. I got something that's absolutely incredible to work for today. But the best of all of those statements I love, he's the principal, and I'm the agent. Every one of us are agents. And what the hell is an agent? Agent is the person that represents the principal. How am I doing with that? How am I representing my God where I show up this morning, last week, last month, and last year? How am I doing with that? And they tell me, you know, if I roll into that contract that we all know, I'm not preaching to the choir here, you know, you stay close to me and perform my work well, you know, everything you need is going to be provided. Oh, my word. You know, that, you know, need got expanded to something way beyond what I could ever imagine. What I could ever imagine. I got an idea about the self piece now, and I've got something that I'm to go into inventory. And I latch on to the hand of this newfound creator, and I mean, I am in the dark, you know, and I had done this before, and you know what this was, you know, I puffed my chest out and said, I did a 4-step, and I did a 5th step, you know, and that was with Louise Rose, and she was an older woman in the fellowship, and, you know, bless her. I mean, she was an incredible woman with a tremendous amount of love, and she was a therapist. And she based all her stuff on therapy. And she said, Dain, you know, I'm going to do this inventory. I want to do this inventory with you. You know, this was in the early stages with the cigar smoking and chewing guys. And I did, you know, and I did a clinical garbage dump. And there was no freedom in that. I didn't know that, you know, but there was a lot of ego in that, you know, because I had bragging rights, you know, about, yeah, I did a 5th step with Louise Rose. You know, at this time, you know, I went in and I knew somewhat in a rough idea of what I was going to be looking at. And I went through that resentment inventory. And I went through the fear. And I went through the sex and wrongful, harmful conduct to others inventory. I don't know about the best of ability because I have no idea, you know, definitively what that looks like. You know, I just did it. I prayed and I did it. And I asked God for help because that had started to become somewhat of a habit, you know. And that was probably in those days too, some of my purest prayers maybe, you know, because it was the simplest, you know, and it came from a heart that was just open. Unadulterated with a lot of my old ideas and the values and all those things that I have picked up coming along this path with these years of being sober. After I moved out of sobriety. And I sat down with them and we went to it. And that was an incredible experience for me, the first of many. You know, and he's taking notes as we're doing this deal. And at the backside of it all, you know, he says, you got some objectionable behaviors here. And he starts rolling down the list. And I am like absolutely appalled, you know. When the hell is this guy going to stop calling me, you know, all these adjectives that I don't like? You know, you're belligerent, you're arrogant, you're intimidating, you're a bully, blah, 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 blah. You know, you're irresponsible. I mean, and he's giving me all this. I mean, it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. You know, come on. Really? You see all this? But it was a lot of love, and it was me. And it's 5, 6, 7, and 8, you know, was one continuous event. And I no longer wanted to be that guy. I had the desire to no longer be that guy. It doesn't say, and I'm not telling you right here, right now, that I hit that mark or was hitting that mark. But I had a target to aim at. I don't want to be that guy anymore. What can I do to clean this up? And it set me back, and I went through those first 5 proposals. Do I really know what it means to be an alcoholic? Have I really come to believe in something bigger than me is going to restore me to sanity? That's still questionable these days. On a lot of days, I don't know. I don't think that'll ever be total. And, it might take a lifetime. And if you could tell by the color of my hair and my mustache that, as we say in the military, I'm getting short. So there's not a whole lot of years left, But, I'm pretty happy, where I'm at right here, right now, and somewhat free. And I had a serious piece of business at that point in time to take to God in that 6 and 7. But oddly enough, with the abundance experience in front of me, there was some stuff that was objectionable that was still working for me, and I wasn't too willing to give up. It's working good. God dang it, do I got to let this? Well, how about if I let these loose and, let me just check this out for a little bit, keep it for a spare just in case, because there are some times. And there was times, when, hey, you know what, God? Take a break. I know you're pretty busy. There's a universe to take care of here, I got this. I got this. Not that any of us ever go to self-management, right? But I did what I was willing to do, and it was better than what I've done. And it got me to a place where I started to feel free. It got me to a place where things were somewhat real. It got me to a place where I didn't have to have forgiveness. I just had to have that awareness of how easy it is to lead that double life, triple life, whatever, It got me to a place to understand that there's so many roles that I assign myself, and in those assignment of the roles that I assign myself through the course of a day, like any of us, the key thing here is not to get too attached to it, Say if I want to find my ego, I got to look out in the past, down back in the past or out in the future. That's where I'm going to find it all the time. That lower power is constantly working. It's working as hard as it was back in 91, back in the early days. And its prime objective, with my experience, it just wants to separate me today as much as it wanted to separate me back then. It was successful to do that, and will do that any and which way. And the best entrance that it has is through this monkey mind of Dain's. Peter says it all the time, and and it's not repeating, it's truth, the mind's a predator. The mind's a predator. The book tells us the main problem for Dain centers in his brain. And I never had a problem with that. I had the problem telling me what the problem was all the time. And I had the problem telling me what the solution was. And I never had a problem with that. How crazy is that in itself? But I make the list and I go on to make some amends, and just absolutely incredible. And through this whole journey, it's been an experience to another experience, to another experience, to another experience. I don't say that I've learned to live life. I've experienced life. And I only experience it by being right here in the now. The level of my selfishness and self-centeredness, at times can be absolutely appalling to me. Revolting. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But being awake and aware to it is a big part. Being awake and aware to it is something, now I've got something, that I can do with it. Because I'm cultivating a relationship with God. I no longer I was no longer hiding in the bathroom on my knees by that porcelain throne with the door closed anymore. I'm participating in men's retreats. I'm going to Matt Talbot retreats, where we're hanging out in monasteries and just having an incredible amount of time, I'm sharing one voice and one common solution with men that are absolutely incredible, and women when I'm in their company. gatherings like this. And I'm reading different things because my soul is as thirsty for that relationship as it was when I was out there. And I didn't know that. We've all had a lot of powerful experiences come into our life where we experience that power of God, that incredible amount of love, the consciousness of His presence. I mean, I feel it in this room today. My brother Will that I talked about, being a year older than me, turned out to be an incredible man. He operated on the level of maybe, 10, 12 years old. But he taught me so much about life and living. He was such a free spirit. Incredible. And he had so much love. And to watch an adult man whom he was operate with the absence of ego was incredible to me. Was incredible to me. Was he self-involved? Absolutely. But just like a kid with joy. With joy. And he shared that joy. Everywhere he went, he lit the light of love. We'd go out here, there, we'd go to a restaurant. He doesn't know anybody, and he'd go over to somebody, hey, how you doing, Hey, I'm Will, and, I'm like, look how free he is. My mom died, and I had the privilege and the honor to be his guardian. And my mom kept him cloistered and sheltered and loved him the way she knew how to love him. An incredible woman with so much strength, who had endured so much pain from her young son, Dain, because they put the weight of success on my shoulders when I was a kid, because my brother was coming up short. They wanted me to succeed. And I gave him shame, embarrassment, guilt, a tremendous amount of pain, both my dad and my mom. I had the opportunity, when she passed, as I said, I had the honor to walk shoulder to shoulder with him. And then my wife, Rhonda, as well, who did so much for him. And I had to make a tough decision, one of the toughest that I had ever made, because when she died, he was never in the system, so to speak, with the state of Connecticut. And what they had called, the mental retardation unit. She never wanted any of that. And I knew I couldn't provide for him everything that he needed, and that I needed assistance from that system. And when she died, I had to make a phone call, and tell these people that I was abandoning my brother, and that I was leaving him in my mother's house. And they had to do something. Because that's the only way that I could get him into the system. That was pretty damn tough. But God lit the way for that. Put him in a hotel. I got to go there every day. They gave him a life coach, or whatever titles assigned to the cool people that came and hung out with him during the day. And from there, I was able to get him into a group home. Now, a lot of things that I hadn't recognized until I got sober and I moved down this road, and I really started some self-examination and looking at my life. My dad had done a lot of stuff, regardless of being a fallen down drunk. You know, he had started the first Boy Scout troop in the state of Connecticut, you know, for retarded kids. You know, he started a bowling league, you know. All these things, you know, that I got to sit graveside and talk to my dad about, you know, and make some amends that were absolutely powerful, you know. All the beautiful things he did, you know, and my mom too, that I never recognized them for, you know, but, you know, I was given the ability to take a look at that, you know, and clean some of that stuff up, sitting next to their grave. But his life was pretty inclusive, you know. My dad had a lot of physical stuff, and he died early, and my mom, you know, kept the house, and you know, they were pals and they were partners, and that's as far as his social life went. And when she died, his life just blew up. He got into this group home. He got his first job, working at Goodwill Industries. Well, he went on to be Employee of the Year, far better than his brother. Let me tell you, unreal. Unreal. And he was so proud, you know, and they gave him a custodial job. And I had a commercial cleaning business, and he'd tell me, and my brother, he called me brother. He said, my brother, he said, I did a great job of mopping. You know, I was over at this building today, and he said, and them floors were clean. He go, clean, clean, absolute, completely clean, my brother. And I'm like, oh, Will, God bless you. And I'll never forget it. You know, he got his first paycheck, and he would not let them take that paycheck to his special account that he had. It was $46.31. And he was 6 feet off the ground. Then he came that weekend, because he'd come on the weekends. And my beautiful wife had opened up her house, you know, and I mean, it was mandatory, you know, Will's getting dropped off, and, you know, he'd get dropped off on a Friday, and we would cavort all over the place and just have a blast. Just have a blast and get him back on time for work on Mondays. And he rolled in, and he had that first check, and I'll never forget it, you know, he was so proud. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Look at this guy, $46.31. And it's the biggest deal to him. I wish I was that free. I wish I was that unattached. I wish it meant what it means to him. I wish I didn't have that mind, you know, that so many times and can today turn me to what you're thinking about me and how you feel about me and how I look to you. Awesome, awesome stuff. And we had so many good times, and Rhonda arranged so many super times, and you know, and I'm the provider, I'm hustling, you know, and you know, making decent money with the cleaning business, and it sent him up to Lake Ontario. He used to go fishing with my dad. My dad would take him fishing, you know, and he loved it, and he missed it when my dad died because my mom didn't do any of that, and I'd charter a boat and send him up there 4 times, you know, private boat, you know, go salmon fishing and whatnot, and and I stand to tell you that I went up once, and it was a horrible experience for me, but it was absolutely good for him. You know, we went out on this boat, you know, on Lake Ontario, which is a damn ocean, and nobody can convince me otherwise. I don't care what it says on the map. You know, and these waves are like 3-4 foot high, and we're on this boat, and, you know, I pride myself, you know, I used to go out Point Judith, this and that. And then when I really did a little examining on that, I used to go out Point Judith, Rhode Island, you know, charter fishing and stuff, but that's back in the days when I was getting loaded, you know, and I'd eat greasy eggs and bacon and stuff, and you go out, and, you know, nobody slept, you know, we'd leave the bar, you know, at midnight, drive up there and get on a boat, go fishing, nobody's chumming, you know what I mean, you know, because we're all loaded, nobody paid attention to motion sickness or anything. I'm a sailor. No, it didn't work out that way. We got out there, and it was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you know. We're in those waves and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this ain't working. Take me back. Take me back. And that's what they had to do. And they took me back to deck port, and I'm telling you, you talk about back in the day being, you know, knee-walking, tongue-chewing, grass-eating drunk, right? I am just the same way, seasick. And I'm on my knees, and I got to get off that boat on my knees and on the dock on my knees. And we had taken my wife's car up. She had a Subaru wagon, and I made it to the parking lot on my knees, and I'm hanging on the rear bumper, and that's where I stayed. You know, I mean, everything is moving, won't stop, and I am dry heaving like to no end. And my brother never, you know, hey, my brother, you want to come with us this time? You turn green, ho, 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 you know. No, Will, I love you. I'm just sending you. But there's so much good stuff. She took him ski-doing and snowmobiling, and I mean, he just had an incredible, incredible life, you know, an incredible life. And then, it was September 2015, I got a phone call, and they called me from the group home and said, your brother got hurt. He fell down the stairs. And it didn't hit me, you know. I said, okay, is he okay? And no, we took him to the hospital. And that's all they said. And I was like, well, give me a call. Let me know what's going on. God, probably 30 minutes later, they called me from the hospital and says, you got to get down here. Now I'm a number of towns away, and the only way to get to it is, you know, quickly is a two-way highway. And I hop on that, and I'm about halfway down, and I get another call from the hospital, and it's the surgeon, and he says, your brother broke his neck. Now here's a guy, you know, he went to the dances, and he'd be out there on the dance floor. He loved the bowling leagues. I mean, he just did everything, you know, and he's paralyzed from the neck down, and we need to operate him on right away, and we need your consent. And thank God for the God in my life and what you people have given me, and the people that walked in front of me have passed on to me, which has been passed on to all of us, isn't that? I didn't say anything, which amazes me. I was like, God, you got to be kidding me. What do I do? And it's not the last time that I heard this. I got this. It's a yes. I tell the doctor yes. I told him where I was, and I'll be there as fast as he can. And he says, I don't know if I can wait. I don't know that my brother's coming out of this surgery alive, or what any of that's going to look like. And I'm rolling down this two-lane highway, and I mean, there is traffic like incredible. I get about 2 exits down, and I'm pedal to the metal. I'm going to drive on the freaking median divider, pardon my language, you know. I'm getting there. I got to see my brother. I'm not going to say I don't know what happened, because I know what happened. God's great at traffic control. Cleared the way. I got to the hospital, and I got to see Will before they took him in for surgery. And that started a deep and meaningful experience for 3 months. That's shoulder to shoulder with my wife and my family. We walked through that. And they put him in a rotating bed. And I'm the doer, and I fought for his rights, and I advocated for him. My wife advocated for him, and we fought tooth and nail. Because now we know exactly what's happening. Fast forward. The night of January 3rd, he's in touch points. We had to take him to Massachusetts, bring him back to Connecticut. He's in touch points, and his physical being is leaving. And he hung on through Christmas in spirit. Pretty amazing. I stepped out. It was late at night. I stepped out from the curtain. He's laying in bed, and they're doing the morphine, and I'd asked the nurse if we can amp it up, because I just had a sense that, you know, his physical being was still just restless. And Rhonda says to me that, get in here. And immediately I did. I turned the corner, and I knew this was his time. And I was able to lean down, kiss him on the forehead, tell him I love him, go home to mom and dad and the dogs, and I'll see you on the flip side. And he took his last breath. Now, to be able to feel that, to be able to be present to be able to have that opportunity and to understand that was all God was incredible, incredible. And my wife and I joined hands, and we went outside. And it's winter, and it's cold. And the winter nights, you know, they can be black as heck, and the stars be as bright as hell. It's just amazing. And we both looked up at the sky and says, here you are, dancing with the stars. And that's exactly what we said. And you know, that was his most favorite dance of all the dances that he got to go to every year. And he wore sweatshirt after sweatshirt like we wear our shirts from, you know, Sunlight of the Spirit, year after year after year. And it was an incredible moment of peace. And the consciousness of the presence of God was all over that. That's just one example of many of the things that we get to experience here, the walks that we get to go on, the things that we get to do. This is the power of God that's available to each and every one of us, that we're given away through the steps is a pathway that brings us into a relationship with something at that time that I couldn't see, hear, feel, smell, or touch, but today I see it in the faces of so many. I see it in the places of so many places I go. I see it on my morning walks at the Hillbilly Hideout when I get to take our little dog Johnny out, and I love my walk and prayer in the morning, and I see the dew on the grass and the colors that are just in the droplets, and I look at the sky, and it's not poetry, and it's not crap, and I'm not blowing smoke at you. It's real for me. It's in my heart because God is in my heart. You know, God is made for my heart, not my head. I had it asked backwards for a long time. And I smell that air, and I feel it, and I'm a part of, and I'm right there in the present. And that's where I find my God, where we all find our God. I'm present here with you right now. This is all God for me. The grace that we have in our lives is absolutely incredible. And the things we get to do, we get to sit with another man or another woman across the counter, across the table, across the bench or whatever. And we get to look them in the eye. And we get to tell them why they do what they do in spite of everything they do not to do that. You know? And we tell them what their problem is and what the solution is. And we get to see that light, that fire of God come on in their eyes. Just a little spark. And then we get to see their mouths turn from a frown up, beginning into a smile. And they begin to look at us with a little bit of earnest. And I said, how many times have we heard? You mean to tell me that's what I have been doing? That's why I keep doing what I keep doing, in spite of everything I've done not to. And we get to shoulder up with them and walk with them on this incredible journey that takes them through this archway to freedom. We build that with the steps. We build that because we've been introduced to a relationship with something that's far greater than this. All of it. We've been introduced to the Almighty, the All-Powerful, the All-Loving. And at the end of the day, I certainly like to remember, it has nothing to do with what I've done. But it has everything to do with what God's love has done for me. That's all I got. Thanks.